Hi guys, it's Misty from the Book Rat, and I've got another Fairy Tale Fortnight post for you. I've said many times before, I always think fairy tales and fairy tale retellings and anything that has that sort of folklore feel should be read aloud. Partly it connects you to that whole idea of folklore and telling stories around the fireside and all of that, but also I think that people who write fairy tales tend to write really lyrically, very intentionally because it mimics that fairy tale style, and it's just begging to be read aloud. So today I'm going to read an excerpt of Keturah and Lord Death by Martine Leavitt. The full synopsis as well as links to the book can be found below, but basically this is about a girl who makes a bargain with death, and that's actually the part that I'm going to read. This is the first time that she meets death and is trying to plead for her life and make a little deal with him. So here we go from Keturah and Lord Death. He held out his hand. My mind whirled, desperate for a way to live, knowing I could not run away. I could see myself reflected in his shiny black boots, my face pale and bug-bitten. I could not bear to look at that pitiful reflection. And then into my mind came a memory of Hattie Pennyworth's son, who was dragged by a horse and should have died, but lived. And Jershon South, who went to sleep for 2 weeks and awoke one day as if he'd slept but a night. And what about my own cousin, who once ate a mushroom that killed big men? Though he was young, he survived. Death often sadly surprised us, but sometimes he gladly surprised us too. Sir, you are not easy to entreat. I am not entreated at all. But I hear you are sometimes cheated. He laughed then, and I saw that he was perilously beautiful, at once terrifying and irresistible. Good Sir Death, I said too loudly, I would tell you a story of love, a love that could not be conquered even by you. Truly, he asked, I have seen many loves, and none were so great I could not divide them. This is a story of a beautiful young maiden, who, though she was a peasant, fell in love with the lord of the manor. I have heard this tale before, in 1,000 different ways, he said. But my tale, Lord Death, is one that will make even you love, that will heat even your frozen heart. My boldness astonished even me, but I stood to lose nothing. Indeed, he said in disbelief. Then say on. Once there was a girl, an auspicious beginning, who loved no one. A love story in which there is no love. You have caught my attention now, said Lord Death. Though her mother died giving birth to her, and though her father followed his wife to the grave soon after, the girl had been raised on love. I see you have given me a part in the story, said Lord Death, and if I could trust myself, I might have thought he said it with a hint of sadness. The girl grew with love in the very air she breathed, I continued. When her grandparents sat together, and grandmother was not spinning, the couple held hands. They talked together of all the big and small things of life, and rarely disagreed. When they did, it became a thing of laughter. Sometimes they shared sadness, especially when they thought of their daughter, who had not lived to hold her own child. They danced together at village dances. They prayed together at night before they slept, and then slept close. Often, for no reason, grandfather would bring his wife a flower. Grandmother in her garden would bring the biggest, reddest strawberry for her husband, the darkest and sweetest raspberries, the newest carrots. She made rose water from dying roses and splashed it on herself for the sake of grandfather. They drew the girl into their circle of uncommon love, and established in her forever a desire to have such a thing for herself some day. After this, the girl longed for a love that could not be ended by death. From the time she was young, she knew that her true love was there, somewhere, living a life that would one day intersect her own. Knowing this made every day full of sweet possibility. Knowing that her true love lived and breathed and went about his day under her same sun made her fears vanish, her sorrows small, and her hopes high. Though she did not yet know his face, the color of his eyes, still she knew him better than anyone else knew him, knew his hopes and dreams, what made him laugh and cry. I paused to look at Lord Death. He was regarding me with an unreadable look, a look of great concentration. Had I not seen this same look across the flames of the common fire when I told fairy tales to the villagers? He leaned back as if to pull himself out of the web of my story. With a gesture of his hand he said, Every girl dreams of such love. Then they marry and quarrel, and the cares of life drive love out. The girl knew that quarrels would come because their lives were entwined. How passionately one defends a heart that is vulnerable, I said. The girl and her true love will get old and ugly. Was his tone defiant? Or was it that he wished, demanded that I persuade him. They will, and yet they will see past the scars of time to view the soul that first loved. Could such a love be? Lord Death asked, but his voice was not harsh. We will never know, for one day death came for the girl. She knew that her soul's heart would love as much as her living heart, and that she would long and ache and mourn for eternity for her true love. She tried to persuade Lord Death, tried to make him see how dark and lonely would be the life of her future love without her. She tried to tell Lord Death how even he would rejoice for the sweetness of that hoped-for love, if only he would let it be. I was weeping now, for a truer story I had never told. Death would not be persuaded, for he had found her first, and yet... And yet, Lord Death said quietly, the end of the story I cannot tell. Cannot tell? Will not tell. Until tomorrow. Let me live, sir, I gasped, and I will tell you the ending tomorrow. There you have it. That is from Keturah and Lord Death, and if you would like to know the ending of the tale, or whether Death takes her bargain, pick up a copy of Keturah and Lord Death. That's all for now. Make sure you check out Fairy Tale Fortnight, and as always, thanks for watching and happy reading.